Reports began to appear lately that the virus originated in a lab at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, instead of the wet market, located only a few miles away. It was reported that the market does not even sell bats, but was indeed an exotic seafood creatures market. It was reported back in 2015 within the United States that research on viruses, similar to the one plaguing the world today, occurred at Duke University in North Carolina. However, the US government forbade further research, and the lab was moved to Wuhan, China. American scientists trained the Chinese at the beginning, and the French government helped set up the lab. November of 2019, with the first severe cases requiring hospitalization in December. It is believed that the Chinese government knew about the outbreak and how bad it could become as early as mid-December. They ordered the destruction of documents and did a thorough scrubbing of the lab in order to cover up evidence. They also shut down all domestic travel from and to Wuhan within China, but let international travel go from Wuhan until they announced the public quarantine in January. It is believed that the World Health Organization helped the Chinese government to cover its tracks. After Wuhan was locked down in quarantine on January 21st, Chinese officials still attended the Davos Economic Forum in Switzerland at the end of January, and failed to discuss or even mention the spread of the virus and the danger it presents. The US is the largest World Health Organization donor, giving the organization $893 million within the last 2 years. Back in 2002, SARS epidemic broke out, and it is believed that when it spread to Vietnam, its government took the threat seriously and moved quickly to contain it at the local level, successfully preventing a widespread outbreak within the country. Researchers are focused on discovering the factors that affect the infection rate and death rate, and why it differs so much from country to country. It was strongly believed that countries with higher senior populations would also have a higher rate of infection and fatalities. Many refer to Italy as an example, which has a large, older population. But what about Monaco or Japan, where the population is even older, but the rate of infection is much lower? It was also widely reported that infection and fatality is vastly different within the different demographics in the US. For example, African Americans have a much higher rate of infection and death that is 3 times higher compared to their white counterparts per capita, and 5 times that of Asian Americans within the US, despite African Americans being the youngest population group within America. Another big development that happened within the last few days is that countries with mandatory tuberculosis vaccinations tend to have lower cases of the new virus. To be clear, TB vaccinations does not prevent all people from getting the virus, but it's possible that it helps reduce the rate of severe cases and the amount of cases overall. Some countries made TB vaccination a requirement for all of its people. The countries that enforced this usually had higher rates of tuberculosis than other countries. Developed nations, such as the US and Canada, do not require TB vaccination. Countries that require the TB vaccination or required it in the past have magnitudes lower of current pandemic cases than the countries that don't have the requirement. Italy doesn't require its citizens to have a TB shot, or how it is known in the world as the BCG vaccine by the name Bacillus calmette guerin vaccine. Spain canceled the requirement in the 80s, but Portugal next door did not, and the rate and severity of the disease in Portugal is about 10 times lower than that of Spain's. The same correlation can be seen between Eastern and Western Germany. In Eastern Germany, it was mandatory during socialist control for many years, but not in the western part, and currently, Western Germany has many more infections. Ecuador in Latin America did not have that requirement, but neighboring Colombia and Peru did, and they have a much lower spread of the virus compared to Ecuador. The same correlation can be pointed in comparison of African Americans and Africans. Most African countries have the mandatory BCG vaccination, while in America, most people are not vaccinated with TB.